hands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the open session minutes of March 12, 2018.
Make a motion to approve the session minutes from March 12th, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Corrections, edits? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll pass over student comments.
Yeah, unfortunately, Maria could not be here this evening.
Are there any members of the community who wish to address the committee at this point? Hearing none, we shall move on to superintendent's comments.
Okay, good evening, everybody. First, I put a few artifacts in your packet of our strategic planning process that started in earnest a week ago today. As the documents show, we have an outstanding committee of 30 different representatives on our core planning committee, representing all 4 schools, every single stakeholder group, parents, students, teachers, staff members, administrators, community members, and so on. And I believe I also included in your packet our schedule for meetings. The intent is we'll probably meet about a grand total of a half dozen times as a core planning committee, but then there'll also be additional meetings, some of which will be focus groups with parents, with students over a couple dates in April. Really the core activity is really at this juncture is really all about vision building. We started last Monday with the protocol that I also included in your packet known as Portrait of a Graduate, where you're really thinking about what are the end means, what are the most critical skills and habits of mind that we want for our kids as they graduate, and then plan backwards of how do we provide those types of learning opportunities for kids. So I think the group that we have to build this vision is really outstanding, and really looking forward to it. And as the timetable shows, it's our hope to have the lion's share of this work done by the summer, with a final plan for your approval in August. I don't know, Sean, I know you were there a week ago, if there's anything that you'd like to add to that?
Just that I think it's a really productive crew, and there's a lot of creative ideas coming out of it already. You know, really, we just went through a bunch of introductions and trying to get to know each other, and I think out of that, we're starting to realize, you know, what we have to do to put our brains around this problem. So that's a really good group.
Yeah, I agree. Second item is you also have in your packet a RFP, or request for proposal, for evaluation services of our Spanish immersion program. As I say in the background notes, I think this is long overdue. We are now, believe it or not, in year 21 of this program. I think other than maybe in its infancy, in its first 2 or 3 years, where there was some outside work done through the University of Minnesota, we just really have never had a comprehensive evaluation of the program done. So we've had this conversation internally, but we've also had this conversation with the Spanish Immersion Advisory Board. And I think this is, the time is right to move forward with this. So as you can see, as the RFP specs indicate, what we're looking to do is both a qualitative and a quantitative piece, looking at some of the measures of how well our kids do, some of the outright outcomes, but then a qualitative piece through surveys, through focus groups, and through direct classroom observation, looking at, first off, our structures of the program I think we've been long entrenched in the way we do things at the elementary school and the middle school. Is that necessarily the most efficacious way to go? But then also looking at professional practices, the pedagogy, the assessment practices, and also the curriculum. Is it appropriate for an immersion program, and what type of changes could be made? And then I think another big piece is looking at what type of structures and practices do we have in place to assist learners that are struggling, or a child that is in first, second, or third grade and they're diagnosed with a learning disability. So I think there's a lot of pieces there. I think the RFP describes them to the level of detail that's needed. So we're in the process over the next 3 weeks of getting some people with expertise in this area to put forward a proposal to do the evaluation. And the timeline would be essentially some of the beginning work over the summer months, but really those first 3 months of school, with the expectation of having an evaluation report in place by the beginning of December, and then a report to the school committee on December 10th. So I will keep you apprised on the proposals that we get in, and I will bring them forward to you with a recommendation for a vote for or approval for the winning one. Any questions on any of that? Okay, thank you. And then last but certainly not least, we are delighted to have some guests here this evening. Really our officer core of the Mendon-Upton Educational Foundation, our president Kathleen Meckel, our director of grants Jen Conrad, and our treasurer Lauren Heather are here to kind of give an update on where MUF is. If you've been following it, we've had a lot of great deal of success, particularly in fundraising, and most recently, some grants that were awarded. So I don't know, Kathleen, if you'd like to talk a little bit about it.
I know we're going to be showing some video too, so I'm not sure will that be on this screen?
Absolutely, it'll all be.
So I'll take seated. First and foremost, we have a new website we're really excited about. This was, we put this in place so we could have greater visibility in the community. It's very dynamic. We can make changes much more easily. And we are trying to push this out. So take a look at it at your leisure, send it out to others who are looking to see what we're all about. We've updated a lot of our messaging on this as well. So I think it's a pretty good indicator of where we're headed and where we've been, and would encourage all of you to check it out. We are in the middle right now of accepting grant applications for our 2018 round of grants. They are due a week from today. We have one in at this point, but we're hoping for a few more. But we wanted to spend a little bit of time tonight showing you the grants that we did this year. So the winners from last year have been putting their grants in action this year, and we asked them this time around, rather than doing a celebration of excellence, which we've done in the past, which was sort of an evening event, we decided we wanted to have them do video submissions instead. And this way it stays with the website. We can tweet them out, we can put them on Facebook, we can use them on our website. It's more marketing, but it's also to really show you what is going on in these classrooms with these grants. So we'll start with Artomatic. Artomatic was a grant that was awarded to Misco Hill and Nipmuc. I'll narrate it as it goes along, it's just music. This is John Hansen and Allison Klisch. The grant was for $1,200. It features a vending type machine that allows students to purchase artwork created by students in the form of metal buttons or pins that are encapsulated in a reusable bubble type plastic unit. The 3D printer at Misco Hill also offers the ability to include 3D printed keychains and tokens that are designed by the students. This is grades 5 through 12 are impacted by this grant. You'll see one of these vending machines at each school, Misco and Mendon-Upton. And this promotes artistic expression, but it's also something that can be shared among classmates. So. I was told that the students participated in the production of this video.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the kids, and these are 5th and 6th graders who did this, made game board pieces.
Yeah. So that's automatic. The second one, Cubelets Robotics Project, was Memorial, Debbie Coyle for $1,530. This is robotic technology to enhance the engineering and design curriculum. And this grant, well, there's a lot of writing here as well, but this grant features cubelets that are independent cubes that can sense, think, or act. And by attaching multiple cubes magnetically, many different outcomes can occur. The sensing cubes use information.
This cublet makes everything run. There are 3 types of cubelets: an act cublet, a sense cublet, and a think cublet. This is the we're gonna build a robot, and my input is me putting my hands on top of this, and the output is what is spinning around.
So the sensing cubes use information from the environment. It includes distance, temperature, brightness to perform their function. The thinking cubes are mini robots that determine how things will move, and then the acting cubes have wheels or lights on them. And as students work with the cubes, they learn how to operate the robots, determine which combinations will perform the desired task. This is for grades 3 and 4 at Memorial. And it highlights imagination, creativity, collaboration, STEM, STEAM, engineering, and robotics, among other things.
Tell me what you made. So we put the flashlight on the sensor for like the eyes, and then we put brightness on the back of the battery right here, Wait, put your hands up. Show me how your robot works. So it's big enough to put on my eye. I'm trained to spin. Figure it out. So whenever it goes towards your hand, it goes faster. Oh, so it chases your hand. So can you tell me why it works to perform this task? Travis, why does it do that? Because we have the sensing part on fire, and when you put our hands on it, it goes faster. You had to change the configuration of the wheels to make it chase you? Yeah. This is a spinner and wheels, and that's the light. We really don't need the light, but we just decided we kind of like the idea of putting the light. The party bus. So you guys chose the task of making a confused robot that moves in a circle, right? The spinner makes it turn, and the wheels are needs turning and the wheels go the way that spinner. That's really cool. Okay, so how come it's moving faster now? And because we have like Cubelet and the light scatter. Oh, you cover up the light. And it's a reverse. That's why it's reverse.
And again, these grants are sustainable, they can be used for year and year, so, and built upon, so. Exchange program in Spain. Nipmuc Regional High School, this is Katie Cardamone and Trish Maloney for $2,000. This grant was part of a number of funding efforts, I believe, for the, to put in place the sustainable exchange program between Nipmuc Regional High School and Santa Teresa School in San Sebastian, Spain. This grant helped to fund the cost of the initial reconnaissance trip to Spain that included a small group of teachers, students, and administrators. The first exchange will take place this September when some of our Spanish-speaking students will travel to Spain for 10 to 14 days, and then we'll have their Spanish counterparts come to Upton and Mendon as well. This highlights global awareness, cultural and linguistic immersion, friendship and collaboration with people from other countries, and many, many others. Good characters.
Me llamo Joe Baruchak y soy director de las escuelas regionales de Mendon-Upton. Estamos encantados de estar aquí y esperamos trabajar con la comunidad de Santa Teresa por muchos años.
Hi, my name is Bridget, and I will be part of the Spanish exchange student program in September. I will be hosting a student from Spain at my house for 2 weeks, and then I will be going to live with them for 2 weeks. Through this experience, I hope to enhance my Spanish speaking skills and teach them a little bit more English. Also, I hope to acquire more knowledge about the Spanish culture and teach the student living with me a little bit about the American culture. Thank you for your donation, and I look forward to it.
Hi, my name is Bobby Haley. I'm a junior at Nipmuc. I'm mostly excited to travel to San Sebastian, able to experience the city. It looks very nice in all the pictures. I'd like to do a little bit of surfing while I'm there. I'm hosting too. I'm pretty sure boys at my house.
Hi, I'm Haley Alcott. I'm a junior at Nipmuc, and I'm really looking forward to this exchange program because I just want to be able to see what it's like for the students in Spain learning English, and I can share my experiences from learning Spanish.
Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm a junior at Nipmuc, and I'm really excited to be for the exchange program because I'm excited to go to school in a different culture and in a different language and learn things in a different language because they learn differently than us here. And I'm also really excited to have an exchange student that I can speak their language because I've hosted German exchange students, so I don't know German. But when I'm hosting a Spanish exchange student, I'll be able to talk in two languages, and it's going to be really cool.
So our next grant video is Makerspace Center's Memorial School Library, Carlin Gale, for $1,060. This grant allowed the Memorial Elementary School Library to create a valuable makerspace center featuring real-life hands-on activities within its physical space. The financial award allowed Memorial to purchase equipment, tools, kits, and storage for the centers. Each kit presented a variety of challenges and problems for students who work together to solve collaboratively using the resources available at that center. The centers will continue to expand from year to year. They're used with grades K through 4. And as you will see in the video submission, this is a huge hit with kids. Highlights STEM, collaboration, problem solving, failure, and trying again.
When we had the heaviest one in the back, and then we tried putting it a different way in the back, and tonight I came up with the middle like that, and I didn't know what it was, so we need everything. Makerspace centers were really fun. I really wish we could do them all year
We have one other grant that doesn't have a video yet because it hasn't started. That one's called Grow Big or Grow Home. It's from Ms. Hill, Sarah Higgins, for $730. The purpose of that grant, this grant is to give students the knowledge and skills to grow their own fresh produce, help them understand how beneficial fresh fruit and vegetables are for our health and environment, assist them in gaining knowledge on organic foods, GMOs, what they mean, and what to look for on product labels. So Ms. Higgins will be selecting a small group of 10 8th grade wellness students to participate as her student leaders for this grant. So she'll be working with them directly to help teach them some leadership skills and give them the opportunity to work with some of the younger students in our school district. So they'll be traveling to Clough and Misco to work with 4th graders. They will be conducting presentations, including discussions on what an organic food is, what are GMOs, what grows in New England, what is the cost of organic food, planting knowledge and skills, and the health benefits, both physical, mental, and social, of organic planting. And then the 8th grade students are actually going to be planting vegetable seeds in a little container that these kids can take home with some instructions on how to care for them going forward. So they'll be assessed with a pre-health survey and assessment and a post-health survey as well. So, so those are the 5 grants from 2017. As I mentioned, we are hoping to get a number of good grants for 2018 as well. And we'll be back in fall to present those, at least in name to you, and come back in a year and have some other fun videos to share. So check us out. We've been doing a lot of work this year. We hope to do even more next year. So it's a great group of people, and clearly teachers and students as well.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. We know that's a lot of hard work behind the scenes to raise all that money. So thank
It's a lot
you.
of work, but
Yeah.
for good cause.
You guys have done an outstanding job.
Yeah.
You could just see from just those 4 videos, how many lives you've touched and how you've impacted kids' learning. So kudos.
Especially because it's all hands-on too. It's the kind of learning that kids love to do, not the kind of learning that kids have to do. You know, so it's really nice.
All right, moving on to administrators' comments.
Okay, so you have in your packet a document that's been in the making for at least a couple of years now, right, Maureen? As far as just formalizing a curriculum review process for the district and coming up with a distinct timetable. So as part of her update tonight, Maureen's going to talk about the work that she and the district curriculum team have done on this.
Thank you. And I was thinking, how can I work in videos of students learning in my future curriculum updates, because that was amazing. But there is that connection with the curriculum and this review process that I'll give you. You have a lot of information in the packet, so I'm just going to give you, some highlights from it. But the impact and connection between the resources and reviewing resources we need. So in many ways here, the grants are just enhancing what we're doing, and when we identify some gaps or areas, that was great to see. So thank you, and I'm definitely going to incorporate some student videos in all future presentations. Basically, what I've been trying to do this year is just give some highlights of some of our action steps that relate to our strategic plan and curriculum. So the last time I talked about how we were meeting as vertical curriculum teams over the course of this year. Another action step that it has been a work in progress. Going back a year or so ago, this had been an action step, and I wanted to kind of push it off for another year, because what I found in our building, when I've talked about how we're doing stage 1 of mapping, stage 2, we finished that up, and we launched stage 3 this year. And so I gave some updates on that earlier in the year, that really the curriculum review cycle should really launch once you have curriculum maps. And our teachers and teams have just done an amazing job over the last few years with these curriculum maps and putting them in place. So we're really ready for it. Another thing that took an extra year is I had a sense in my head of what it would look like, then talked in the last year with all other districts of how they do it, and then decided, we can make this even better. And so I have to give credit to a lot of other districts and assistant superintendents that have been starting this process as well. because we collaborated on a lot of the documentation similar to Medway and Ashland and Hopkinton, and I list them in the back, but we're all kind of doing the same work, and we've had a lot of sharing going on last year. So basically, the reason why we have, so we're going to be launching next year a 5-year review process. Here's a list of rationale of why you want to actually put into place a system and a review that it's not reliant on, Maureen's going to say, okay, we're going to go and look at curriculum, or when I was a teacher, and it was back when we used to have curriculum in binders, someone would come in, okay, you have to work on curriculum, you did it, you typed it up, and you put it on the binder, and then you never looked at it. And what we've really liked about using the database of Atlas is that everyone can go in and revise it, and it's ongoing. So now that we've built it, beyond just those curriculum maps, we also want to review everything that relates to the programming. We want to look at assessment data. We want to, if there are new standards that come in, which has been happening. So, for example, we have social studies. The draft standards are out, and people are getting feedback on that. That's going to impact our social studies programming in the district. So we have to have review and have a formal review. So that's one example. Or a couple years ago, we had the new science standards. So we have state mandates. So it's important to have the system in place where you have a broad team looking at it and also looking at resources. So that's a piece of, we might, coming out of some of these self-studies, we may identify areas where we say, we have a great, core program for Go Math at the elementary level, but maybe we identify, okay, for tier 3, and this has come up a little bit, tier 3, we might need some specific resources for some students. Okay, well, that's going to come, those things are going to come out of conversations with our teams across the district when they do this, and then we can, implement and put it into the budget, make recommendations. So there's a lot of reasons to really have a formal review process in there. What we decided to do, and just districts do it different ways. Some do like 7 years, some do 3. Kind of went with the 5 years, where you have phase 1, and that's kind of, I think almost the most important part. So I'm going to give you some highlights on that in the next slide. But basically, you develop a team. You have to start your self-study when we analyze all of this. I'll talk about that in a moment. And then the next, after you have the self-study, then we would go to develop, redesign. Maybe we want to make changes to our curriculum or broad changes. And then you kind of go into this monitoring, implementation. Maybe you work in develop, redesign. Maybe you want to pilot some materials, and then you're going to go in and maybe fully implement it, monitor it, and then we want to evaluate and have assessment, look at assessments just prior to when you would start the self-study. So the self-study would be the first thing we'd be launching next year. And this would be new, we had, as far as I'm aware, I don't know if we've ever done this kind of process. What we would do is we would have a curriculum review team. It would have a range of administrators, curriculum leaders, teachers, special ed representatives, specialists, if it's a fit. Not too big, but kind of representation across the district. And I would say our curriculum work this year with the vertical teams and representatives, I think is a good start, because we're beginning vertical conversations. And then in the self-study process, in your packet, it goes into a lot of details. Just to refer you to page 5 is the beginning of the self-study directions. So that team, at the beginning of the year, we would go over this, and they would develop essential questions. So I have a list of types of questions that they might want to look at in the study, about instruction, assessment, resources, professional development. And so that group would analyze that, look at current curriculum, where we're at, and in the end, they would come together and have a self-study document, and that would end up being presented at the end of the year. So I'll show the timeline. We'll talk about that in a second, but basically we would have that, and then if we identified there was an area that we needed to make some changes, then we'd develop an action plan, and then we would launch that in the next year. So our goal, and this is the first time we're doing this, but based off of what other districts that I've talked to that have been doing the last couple of years, we would try to, I'd launch it at the beginning of the year in September to October. We convene it, and then the team would start to develop the essential questions, and then start the review, kind of November through February. And then what you do once you have that self-study report, and I almost hesitate to say it's similar if you think of a NEASC report, because it's not going to be that comprehensive, but where, if any of you are familiar with NEASC, once you have your report of your self-study, it goes back to all the teachers for them to validate it or give feedback on it. So there would that be opportunity that this group would come up with that self-study report, like an executive summary of it. It'd go back, teachers could take a look at it. We'd complete, make any changes, and then we'd present it and start the action plan. In the back of the packet, there are a lot of templates that we would use. Now, some districts, that whole process, they do it over the course of 18 months to 2 years. Other districts are doing it in one. I'm gonna try to do it in one, and then it's possible that we may find we may need to adjust it, but we're gonna kind of shoot to have that kind of schedule. So I was purposeful with putting social studies first. So basically, you generally would have 1 to 2 to 3 curriculum focus areas in a year. I say this is, kind of tentative too. There may be a big shift sometime with some standards, and we say, okay, maybe we need to adjust it because if we're already doing the work, maybe that would make sense in that year. So with social studies, with the new standards, basically what a lot of districts are doing right now is they're not making any big changes next year because they're going to be approved in June. They're going to start to just build their implementation plan next year to start the transition in coursework in the following year. So I put that first because we're going to be doing that work anyways. And also just through our Excel network and social emotional learning that we've been talking about, a lot of things that come up, with wellness and some goals, and I know we've talked at the middle school about, taking a look at our wellness programming. So I thought that might be a good fit. So I'm trying to balance with, especially our elementary teachers who teach all of those core subjects, not to have double up of social studies and math in 1 year, ELA science. So I spread them out over the years. I also thought, for example, with ELA going in the following year, that if you think back to, especially at the elementary level, the changes we've made, we'd be about 5 years in with Reading Wonders. So it's a good time to kind of start that review. And also there are new art standards that are coming out. And I know part of our goals have been reviews of special ed programming, so I thought that might be good to kind of, dive a little deeper too. So it's possible we change some of those, but you work kind of on a cycle through that. And that is kind of the quick overview, but I'm excited that on my end, I kind of feel like I have something I think will really work for us. And in different districts, I've gone through different processes, and I've seen some work well and some kind of, you kind of just do a quick review, but I think there's a lot in here that other districts have shared with me that I think it's going to be great for us to have an established cycle for reviewing this. So I'm excited about that.
So by the time you ramp up to 2022, then all of those will be in progress at some phase.
Right.
Right, and then you'll just repeat the process again.
Exactly.
I see.
Yep. And so for example, actually, I almost think back to my first year's teaching when I was at Taunton High School, and they came in, and I remember everything was kind of very budget and resource related, and it would be like, this is the year that social studies reviewing everything, and that was a really big school. You're like, okay, coming a new teacher, but that had been in place a long time there, and then it was similar in Framingham. We had kind of a review process, and we did it differently when I was in Grafton. So I've seen it, and I think it works well if you're really strategic also for budgeting. So sometimes you may find that, okay, we know we need to allocate some of the resources that are in this department, but we're going to need to get resources because we've identified it here, and you can kind of work through that. So it will all be up and running.
Now, I'm curious when you're creating curriculum for one subject, if there's opportunities for cross.
Yeah, I think, I hope I have questions in there about that. If I don't, let me know, because I can always add it in. But yeah, definitely that would be part of it, the essential questions that I would hope that we would be talking about.
Yeah, cool.
And what's nice about now that we have the written curriculum, now we can keep making it better. And so so if we look at, when we get to stage 3, for example, or which is kind of what the lessons are, the teachers, if they're really using it, they're going to go in and look at every year, what can I do? So we can look through it for a lens of technology, let's say, and say, are we, and run reports and say, like, where are we using technology and integrating? Okay, well, there might be a gap, or maybe, we talked, we have Lori here for science, like, maybe there was a goal with lab reports. Okay, well, we can pull that up and hone in, but it's also that interdisciplinary piece where we can take a look and run what courses. What's nice about ALS, you can run who's at the same time, and it builds that interdisciplinary, because if I'm a social studies teacher, I can look to see in that grade level what they're doing in the other subjects too. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
Cool, very cool.
And we had talked about, when we had our middle school meeting, we talked about infusing art into, because like that was such a great release for, the middle school age child. Like, so I see that, we're gonna evaluate, each of those topics, but could we like address that immediately? Like how we infuse art into, you know what I mean? Like, is there an opportunity to do it like based on our discussions?
I don't know. We are
Because like I know that's not a specific topic, but
this is like, so I would gather just for this, let's say you would have all the social studies representatives and they'd be honing in on these standards and review and materials and what's out there and mandates. But I would say that we're actually having a lot of those conversations. So, when I was thinking like at the high school, we're doing the last like lead learner meeting, we were talking about how we can work across and integrate and create new courses and bring in art into what we're doing. So a lot of those conversations are taking place in some of these meetings that we're having, like with department chairs in some of the lessons. And our teachers are amazing in this district. I mean, they are already working with teachers all the time. There are lots of examples where there's a lot of integration. Some I know about, kids that would be kind of public, or that was awesome. But others, I kind of hear about it after the fact. I'm like, oh wow, they're doing that. They've really been intentional this year with their own planning, and with Alice has had the whole department working together.
I love that, because that was super impactful for me to kind of see that as something that age set needs. And you've always think about art as an independent subject versus it being just kind of filtered into everyday curriculum.
Yeah, there's lots of examples of.
So I know that doesn't have to do specifically with the review process, but just something that kind of comes to my mind.
I think then as we finish up stage 3 of the curriculum mapping, then the work next year at MISCO was to, now we have maps, now we can start to lay them out on the table and look at where the overlaps and the obvious connections are. And in the scheduling piece that we're working on is how do we get elective teachers so that they're able to attend team meetings to collaborate with their colleagues on that kind of work. So
that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to subcommittee updates, the superintendent evaluation subcommittee. Sean, do you know?
So this is a placeholder, as I understand, for the 6-month review.
You got it.
So we
That's
need
my
to get
update.
So we need to get a date on
Sing
the
jazz to the
calendar.
job, as my mother would say.
There it is.
So we have to agree on a date.
Oh,
We can do that. Do you
We
want to
can
do that right now, or do you want to do it after? the
let's
meeting?
do that.
We can do that.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is old business. Is there any old business we need to cover? Hearing none, moving on to new business, the approval of field trip to the Andes and Amazon Adventure.
Okay, you have in your packet, I think, a great deal of information about this proposed trip. MISCO science teacher Lori Holloway is here along with Jen Mannion to answer any questions that you have. I think probably the best document is the one that has kind of the summary of the details of the trip. As I say in the background notes, I realize that this is very different as far as having our middle school students travel internationally. And Lori started pitching the idea, I want to say probably around the holidays, to both myself and Jen. Basically everything that I have asked her to do as far as looking into interest, looking into safety considerations, looking into parental involvement, and looking at really meaningful connections of the trip to meaningful student learning and applying it beyond just that 8-day span where the kids will be gone. She's done. And about 2 weeks ago, she had a session to gauge interest. And I think the interest has been extremely high. It's been so high to the point that, correct me if I'm wrong, Lori, the trip is sold out.
The trip is sold out and we have a waiting list.
Maxed out, and I think the tally is 47 students, but 25 parents, so a little bit more than half are opting to go with the students. And then also, in addition to Lori, there would also be 8 chaperones from the MISCO staff. So you see what the trip would entail. It sounds like it's a pretty remarkable opportunity with regard to seeing Quito, Ecuador, but then also having some opportunities exploring the Andes Mountains, but then also excursions through the Amazon, through the rainforest, and you see some of the adventures that they have going along with it, as far as with the national park and a waterfall excursion and rafting and so on. Something that I also really like is there's a couple of our parents, one of which is a biologist and the other being a veterinarian, who are very interested in creating some cross-curricular connections with regard to an animal rescue center and also doing some work with an indigenous community in Ecuador. So I think there's, again, I realize that this is very different, but I think there's a high degree of excitement around this, and I think it's a really unique opportunity for our kids. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Lori, or as a school committee, do you have any specific questions for Lori or for Jen?
I think you summed it up perfectly. I knew this would be, I knew there would be a lot of interest in this trip, but I'm honestly blown away by how excited students and the parents are. When I opened the trip after the meeting, by the time I went to bed, we had 40 people that had put the trip on deposit. And by the weekend, we had actually sold out and have started a waiting list. So the response has been overwhelming. The kids, the parents, they are so excited. They can't wait. You know, obviously there's questions about an international trip and why this age. And I think it speaks to the Mendon-Upton community and the terrific students that we have, that our teachers are saying, you know what, these kids are great, and I'd be happy to take them to another country and to travel with them and to give up my own personal vacation for a week. Because believe me, that's not something that would happen in every school district where the teachers would say, hey, let's go to a foreign country. But these kids are amazing, and I'm so excited as an educator to be able to, you know, give my students an opportunity that is not something they're probably ever going to get to do in their lifetime. I mean, I'm sure their parents will take them on vacations, hopefully at some point, and maybe they'll go to Europe. But most families aren't typically planning trips to the Amazon rainforest. So I'm so excited to present to my students something that they might never get to do otherwise. I think it has some amazing opportunities for us to do some community service when we're down there. Not only are we visiting an Indigenous people, we're being invited into their community, into their school, which I think will be a wonderful opportunity to our very digital cell phone, iPad-driven students to, you know, see how the other half of the world lives and, you know, just to grow as a global citizen and really have a life-changing experience.
I'll just piggyback on that by saying this year we encouraged teachers at MISCO to base their professional learning goals and student learning goals on their own passions, because we really believe that this trickle-down effect, so that when the educator is enthusiastic and passionate about what they're doing, the engagement increases as well. So I think Ms. Holloway really took that to heart and thought, this is something I'm passionate about. As a science teacher, what better place to take kids and have them behave like scientists? And when she first approached me with the idea, I was like, I didn't really mean that passionate, like the Amazon. My mom hat kind of kicked in real quick, but then I thought, yeah, that's where her passion lies, and that's what it's about, is this type of learning for kids and people being willing to take risks. And there's no better person. I would have anybody more with this experience in our students than Ms. Holloway. So I'm right there with her.
Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
So I'm wondering, how many people are on the waiting list?
I have one student and one sort of friend of a chaperone and like her niece. So if a spot opens up, it'll go to the student.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
Great.
It's a great program.
We're really excited. We're
I'm
having
going to question whether or not people will be interested in it.
Yeah.
It's already sold out.
And when she first pitched the idea, I was like, what are you gonna get? Like 8 kids, 10 kids, maybe?
So what's your target group size?
And she shared with me a former colleague and a mentor from Auburn who's been doing this trip for 20 years with 7th and 8th grade students. And he talked my ear off on the phone for an hour about the trip. And he said, no word of a lie, Joe, it really is a life-changing trip for the kids. And he also felt very passionately about have that connection within your community. It'd be wonderful if you had a parent that is in some type of STEM-based career that can bring home, some of the learning home to the kids and keep it building. And to her credit, Lori's done absolutely everything that I've asked her to do. She's made the connections that I think are critical, and that's why I'm recommending that be approved.
Any other questions? All right, we do need a motion. So I'm calling for a motion to approve the Amazon field trip for April.
Motion to approve the Amazon field trip for April vacation 2019.
A second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity and for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, next item on the agenda is correspondence.
Okay, you have in your packet, and here's a hard copy for your signatures. I think, Diane, you're the only one that we still have left to get. Is a formal letter on behalf of the school committee. First one to Representative Meridian and Representative Murray, and the second one to Senators Fatman and Moore. Just advocating very succinctly 4 pieces as they work through the House budget process in April and then the Senate budget process in May. First, that the minimum per pupil increase for FY19 be up to $100 per student rather than the current $20 per student that's in the governor's budget. That the regional school transportation reimbursement rate be funded at 100% versus the present 66% that it's at. That circuit breaker for special education be fully funded by statute to achieve the 75% reimbursement rate rather than the 65% that it was cut to this year. And then last but not least, the Senator Diaz Chain's bill that significant progress be made to fund the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission, particularly those related to health insurance and special education costs. As I say in the background notes, I really do think that there is a critical mass of people out there from regional school districts advocating for these pieces. It's kind of interesting. We've had this formal organization, MARS, the Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools. A couple groups start this Facebook page, support Massachusetts regional schools, and it seems like there's a lot more energy there than the formal organization, but, I've had, we had Senator Moore here a couple meetings ago. I had the opportunity to speak to Representative Murray and Senator Fatman yesterday at an Eagle Scout ceremony. They realized that the forecasts are more optimistic with regard to revenue for FY19. So I know that they're getting an assault of, an assault of requests from every single type of need. But that minimum per pupil increase, if that did go forward to $100 per student, and the reimbursement rate, I know we'll probably never see 100%, but say it went from 66 to 85, the issues that we had in approving a budget was still $250,000 worth of cuts that would be negated right there if those two things could happen. So I think advocacy is important. I'd like to not only forward these letters with your consent, of course, to our legislative delegation. I'd also like to send them to the town crier and to the Milford Daily News. And I think we should also start a social media campaign to notify our parents to reach out to our 4 representatives. I think it's critically important that they know that we're watching. Again, the increase in state aid is 0.57%. The increase to our 2 communities is 3.6 and 3.4%. It's not a fair balance.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll get off my soapbox right now.
All right, are there other matters not anticipated by the committee within 48 hours of taking meeting?
Well, do we have the motions to approve the letter going out? I think is that not necessary?
You can vote on it if you want to.
Passively agree, okay.
Yeah.
You want to take a formal motion to?
Yeah, I want to take a
So I'll
motion
call
to-
for a motion to formally endorse the signing and sending of the letters to our legislators and as letters to the editors of the respective
Second.
newspapers. You make the motion.
No, motion to send the letter out to our representatives
Okay.
for rectifying the budget problems in the state.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Just
Any
cemented enough
discussion? Any discussion? Okay, all of those in favor?
Aye.
Right, motion carries. The letter shall go out. The press shall be notified. Okay, so moving forward, do we have other matters?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Future agenda items include the homework committee update on April 9th and the presentation of Metro West adolescent health survey data on April 23rd. I hear tell there's a 5K coming up for MRTA.
There is on Sunday, April 8th, which I believe is a week from this coming Sunday, 10 o'clock.
Okay.
It is the 8th annual MRTA 5K. All right, I'm gonna be really braggadocious here. I think I'm the only person on the planet who's run in every single one. I even ran in the first one before I was officially superintendent, okay? But it really is a great cause. We're as they do every year, at 9:30 is the fun run for the little kids, and then the full 5K. They raise a significant amount, and it goes back into the community. It goes back to our kids for scholarships each year. So I
Excellent.
strongly recommend you can either go to the district Facebook or the district Twitter, and there's a link to sign up for it.
Great. Okay. I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at 8:01. Thank you, everyone.
Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want it?
Yeah.
Is that all you want, or do you want?
Anything like
Because
they have no,
books to pass, but I don't really
state
want
and how
to
the
do it
program
until
aligns
I
with
get
district definitions, which district initiative. So it's more.
I know, right? I'm gonna get one
Every time I
formal
have to
form
on
for this.
Yeah.
And then. Telling you. A lot of have.
Thank you.
I know.